There was a silence that filled the room when Steve Harvey spoke that night. The audience leaned in, unaware that what they were about to hear would pierce through their hearts like a quiet storm. His voice, calm yet heavy with truth, carried a weight that only time and wisdom could forge. He said he had seen greatness in many forms, power, fame, wealth, yet none of it compared to the discipline, the devotion, the unshakable unity he found among those who called themselves Muslims. He paused, his eyes narrowing as if remembering a moment that still haunted him. I've seen people rise, he whispered, and I've seen them fall, but there's something about them. The way they pray, the way they bow, the way they live, that makes the world stop and pay attention. The room seemed to grow darker as he spoke, the lights dimming not from electricity, but from the gravity of his words. They honor their God before they honor themselves, he said. In a world where everyone chases their own name, they chase his. There was a chill in his tone, the kind that crawls down your spine when a truth long buried finally comes to light. He told the story of a city he once visited, the early morning air still cold, the streets silent. And then, from every corner, came a sound, the Adhan. The call to prayer, it echoed through every wall, every heart, every silence. He said in that moment he felt something ancient, something eternal, as if the earth itself was answering that call. Steve's voice trembled slightly. You don't understand until you hear it yourself, he said. It's not just a call, it's a reminder that no matter how powerful you think you are, there's something greater watching, waiting. His words carried both awe and fear. A man realizing how small he truly was before a vast, unseen presence. He spoke about how the world may misunderstand Muslims, may paint them in shadows they do not deserve. But those who look closer, those who truly listen, find a light that doesn't flicker even in darkness. You see them fasting, he said softly. You think it's hunger, but it's strength. You see them bowing, you think it's submission, but it's freedom, the kind this world forgot. He told us standing beside a Muslim man during prayer, the man's forehead pressed against the earth, tears falling silently into the dust. That, Steve said, was the moment I understood what humility really means. The audience didn't move, they barely breathed. Every soul in the room was caught between silence and revelation. Then his voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. The reason the world honors them, he said, isn't because of their power, it's because of their surrender. Because even when the world turns its back, they turn their faces to the ground, to the same direction, to the same Lord every single day. A faint tremor filled his next breath. They remember him even when the world forgets. The lights above flickered slightly, casting long shadows across the floor, as if the world itself bowed in acknowledgement. Steve looked up, eyes glistening, his voice echoing like a final prayer. Maybe that's why the world honors them, he said, because deep down every soul, every heart knows the truth when it hears it. And then there was silence again, the kind that lingers, the kind that speaks long after the voice is gone. He didn't move for a long time after that silence settled. Steve Harvey just stood there, staring into the crowd. But it wasn't them he was seeing. It was something else, something distant, buried in memory. The air felt heavy, like it was carrying the weight of something unsaid. The audience could sense it. They leaned in, eyes wide, hearts steady but uncertain, waiting for whatever he was about to reveal next. Then, slowly, his lips parted. His voice, quieter now, trembled with a strange kind of reverence. There's something I never told before, he said. Something that changed me, something that still haunts me. The words slid into the silence like the sound of a door creaking open in the dark. He said it began during one of his tours. Years ago, in a country where the call to echoed from every direction like the heartbeat of the land. He'd gone there for a show, just another night, another crowd. But that evening, something felt different. The air smelled of sand and smoke, and the streets glowed faintly under a dim orange light, like embers refusing to die. He remembered walking out of his hotel just before dawn. The sky was still black, and the world was silent except for one sound, the faint, distant murmur of the Adhan. It came from far away at first, then another joined and another, until the whole city seemed to breathe the same sound. He stopped walking. For a moment, he felt like the earth had paused. He could feel something under his feet, not vibration, but presence. It wasn't just sound. He whispered. It was something alive. Then he noticed an old man standing by a doorway, his hands raised, tears streaming down his cheeks as he whispered words Steve didn't understand. There was peace in his face, a peace Steve had never seen in any of the millionaires, actors, or kings he'd met. That peace, he said, looked untouchable. He walked closer and the man smiled at him. His beard was white, his eyes soft. He didn't speak English, but he pointed at the sky, then at his heart. That was it, no words. Just that gesture, sky, heart. Steve nodded, though he didn't understand it yet. He just felt something move inside him, something that told him this wasn't chance. Later that day, Steve sat in a cafe watching people pass by. Every few hours, they'd stop everything, conversations, business, laughter, and walk toward the mosque, no hesitation, no delay. He said he'd never seen devotion like that. A world constantly rushing, and yet here, when it was time to pray, everything stopped. He looked at the audience again as he spoke, his voice deepening. Do you know what it's like? He said, to live in a world that forgets what it means to pause, to bow, to be grateful. A hush fell again. Even the camera seemed to still. Then he told them what happened the next night, the night that would follow him for years. He was invited by a local host to visit a small village outside the city. The drive took hours through narrow, winding roads surrounded by desert. The stars above looked endless like cold fire in the sky. When he arrived, the village had no bright lights, no noise, no distraction. Just silence, the kind of silence that feels like it's watching you. The host brought him into a small house made of clay and stone. Inside there was a family, a father, a mother, 3 children. The smell of bread and spice filled the air. They greeted him warmly with smiles that reached their eyes. They didn't have much, yet they offered him everything they could. Tea, food, comfort. He said he'd never felt hospitality like that before. Not from fame, not from wealth, but from hearts that gave freely. They talked through translation, laughter spilling through the language barrier. And then, suddenly, the father looked outside. The world went still again. The faint sound of the call to prayer returned, echoing from somewhere unseen. Without a word, the family rose. They spread a small rug on the floor. The father gestured to Steve to wait. He watched as the entire family stood shoulder to shoulder. The little boy beside his father, the mother behind them, their heads bowed. The father whispered something. Then they all went down, their foreheads pressing to the earth. Steve's voice cracked when he described it. I never seen anything like that, he said. The way they touched the ground, it wasn't just ritual. It was surrender, real, total surrender. He said he looked down at his own hands and realized they'd never touched the earth like that before. Not out of humility, not out of reverence. All my life, he said, I'd been reaching upward, trying to rise, to succeed, to be seen. But in that room, I learned that sometimes the truest way to rise is to bow. When they finished praying, the father turned to him and said softly through the translator, when you put your head to the ground, you remember you came from dust, and to dust you'll return. The words struck him like thunder. He didn't reply. He just sat there listening, feeling the silence around him deepen. That night, as he left the village, the moon hung low, red and full. The road ahead was empty. The driver said little. The hum of the engine was the only sound until Steve whispered, they live in peace. The driver nodded slowly. Because they live for God, he said. When Steve returned to his hotel, he couldn't sleep. He kept hearing the words sky, heart, dust. He said it felt like something was pulling him toward a truth he couldn't escape. The next morning, he walked again, this time to a nearby mosque. He didn't plan to go inside. He just stood outside the gate, watching people wash their hands, faces, feet. There was no rush, no noise, just calm precision. He stood there as they prayed, as they bowed in perfect harmony. He said it looked like time itself was bowing with them. Then, when the prayer ended, a young boy walked up to him, maybe 10 years old. The boy smiled and handed him a small bead string, a tasbeeh. For remembrance, the boy said softly. Steve held it in his hand, the tiny beads cold at first, then warm against his skin. Remembrance, he repeated. But remembrance of what? The boy smiled wider. Of who made you? Steve stopped speaking then, his eyes glistening under the stage lights. The audience could see he wasn't performing. He was remembering. He said he carried that tasbeeh everywhere after that. In every dressing room, every flight, every quiet night. It became a reminder of something he couldn't quite name, but could feel always. Years later, when fame began to twist around him, when rumors spread and friends faded, he said he often found himself alone in the dark, holding those beads. And every time, he said, I remembered that family, that man, those words. He leaned closer to the mic now, voice trembling. You see, I realized something. He said, the world honors Muslims not because they demand it, but because deep down we all crave what they have, that peace, that purpose, that surrender. He paused. And maybe the reason we don't understand them is because we're too afraid to understand ourselves. Then his tone changed, lower, heavier, almost haunted. But there's something else, he said. Something I saw later, something I still don't talk about. The crowd tensed. You could feel the air thicken. He told them that a few years after that trip, he returned to the same country. He wanted to find that family again. But when he reached the village, the road was gone, buried under sand. The whole area had been abandoned after a storm. The houses were ruins. The mosque half collapsed. It was as if time itself had swallowed the place. He said he walked through the remains, calling out, hoping someone would answer. But there was only the sound of the wind. Then, from somewhere behind the ruins, he heard a faint sound, like a whisper. He followed it. There, half buried in the sand, was something glimmering under the sun. A small string of beads, the same kind the boy had given him. He knelt down and picked it up. The sand clung to his fingers. For a long time, he just knelt there, staring at the beads, feeling the wind move around him like a ghost. I don't know if they were ever real. He said softly, that family, that village, maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But I felt them. I still feel them. His voice broke then. The lights above flickered slightly. That's when I understood something about faith, he said. It's not just believing in what you see, it's feeling what never leaves you. He closed his eyes for a moment, then looked up again, his tone shifting to a whisper. That day in that desert, I knelt. For the first time in my life, I pressed my forehead to the ground. I didn't know the words. I didn't know the language. I just knew I had to bow. He paused. The silence stretched again, long and unbearable. And when I did, he said, I felt peace, not comfort, not relief, peace, the kind that feels ancient, like it's been waiting for you your whole life. The audience sat frozen. Some had tears in their eyes. He looked around the hall, eyes glistening. That's why the world honors them, he said slowly, because they remember what the rest of us forgot, how to bow before pride, how to kneel before power, how to find freedom in submission. You took a deep breath. You can't fake that. You can't buy it. You can only feel it. Then, in a quieter tone, he added, and once you feel it, you never walk the same again. There was a faint hum from the speakers, like the air itself was holding its breath. He said he started reading after that, learning, listening, not to convert, but to understand, to find why that peace followed him like a shadow. The more he learned, the more he realized it wasn't just a religion, it was rhythm. It was order in chaos, a reminder that life itself is temporary and that every breath belongs to the one who gave it. His eyes softened. When I look at the world now, he said, I see people chasing light in all the wrong places. Fame, money, power. But these people, these Muslims, they carry light inside them. Even in darkness, it doesn't fade. He leaned forward, his tone grave. And that's why the world honors them. Not out of fear, not out of force, but because somewhere deep down, the soul recognizes truth when it sees it. He let the words hang there, the room silent except for the faint hum of electricity. Then he whispered one last thing. Maybe, he said, the reason they bow 5 times a day is because the world forgets at least that many times how small it really is. And with that, his voice faded, slow, steady, like the last echo of a memory that refuses to die. The lights dimmed again. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, from somewhere far away, faint but clear, came the haunting sound of the Adhan, rising, echoing, dissolving into the dark. Steve closed his eyes, and for the first time, he didn't just listen. He understood.